"No one wants to date me," the Apache girl said, then lifted her shirt. I answered, "I'm staying." Alex first noticed Leela on a bright Monday morning when the hallways were buzzing with students rushing to their classes. She wasn't like the other girls, not because of the way she looked, but because of the quiet way she moved, almost as if she didn't want anyone to notice her. Leela had long dark hair that fell in straight lines over her shoulders, and her eyes carried a depth that most people overlooked. She often walked with her head down, trying to make herself invisible, and yet somehow that made her stand out even more. For weeks, Alex had seen her sit alone in the cafeteria, eating slowly while others laughed and shared stories with friends. Sometimes she would glance up, hoping someone would approach her, and then quickly look away when no one did. Alex couldn't help but feel a little guilty. He had friends, people who paid attention to him, and yet here was Leela, a bright girl with so much to offer, hiding behind shyness and fear. He decided to do something small at first. One day during lunch, Alex gathered the courage to sit across from her. "Hi," he said with a friendly smile. Leela's eyes widened for a moment, and then she nodded quietly. "Hi," she whispered. There was something about her voice that made him lean in closer, wanting to understand her better. He asked simple questions at first about school and classes, and she responded with short, hesitant answers. But gradually, as the minutes passed, her words grew longer. Leela told him about her life at home. She lived with her grandmother in a small house near the edge of town. Her parents were not around much, working far away, and her grandmother had raised her since she was a little girl. Her home was full of warmth, with handmade blankets and the smell of bread baking in the oven. Leela loved her grandmother dearly, but she also longed for a sense of belonging outside her small home. She wanted friends who would accept her, not just notice her quietly from a distance. Alex listened carefully. He noticed that when she talked about her grandmother, her voice brightened, her eyes lighting up with a spark of happiness. It was different from the reserved Leela everyone else saw at school. He began to understand that her quiet nature wasn't shyness alone, it was also protection. She had learned to shield herself from the world that didn't always understand her, and that shield had kept her safe but lonely. Over the next few weeks, Alex made it a point to check in with her. Sometimes it was just a smile in the hallway, other times it was a small conversation during lunch. He learned that Leela loved reading stories about faraway places, and she had a remarkable talent for drawing. Her sketches were detailed, showing animals, landscapes, and faces with an understanding of emotion that Alex had never seen in someone so young. But Leela rarely shared her drawings. She feared that others would laugh or dismiss her talent. One rainy afternoon, when classes were canceled early and students rushed out with umbrellas, Alex found Leela sitting under the covered walkway near the school entrance. She had her sketchbook open, drawing quietly, lost in her own world. He approached slowly, careful not to startle her. "Mind if I look?" he asked softly. She glanced up, hesitated, and then nodded. He leaned over and saw her drawings. They were beautiful, each line precise, each expression full of emotion. He smiled. "Why don't you ever show these to anyone?" he asked gently. Leela shrugged. "People might not care," she said. There was a quiet sadness in her words that made Alex's chest tighten. He wanted to tell her that people would care, that her talent was special, but he also knew he needed to be patient. Some things couldn't be rushed. They started to spend more time together. Sometimes it was during breaks between classes, other times after school. Alex learned about her love for the stories of her people, the Apache tales that her grandmother told her when she was small. She spoke about them with pride, her words painting pictures of brave warriors, wise elders, and the beautiful landscapes of her heritage. Alex listened, fascinated. He realized that Leela's quietness was not emptiness, it was depth, a world waiting to be discovered. One day, as they walked home from school together, Leela opened up about something deeper. "No one wants to date me," she said softly, almost to herself. Her words were not spoken to tease or complain. They were a truth she had carried for a long time. Alex felt a pang of sympathy. He knew that she wasn't saying it for attention. She was revealing her vulnerability, something she had rarely shared with anyone. He didn't know exactly what to say at first. Words felt inadequate for the weight of her feelings. So he did what he could. He stayed. He walked beside her, letting her know that she wasn't alone. There was no need for grand gestures or promises, just the quiet assurance that someone cared, that someone was willing to stand by her in a world that often overlooked her. As weeks passed, Leela began to change in small ways. She started sharing her drawings more openly, showing Alex first, and then eventually bringing them to school art class. She laughed more freely, her smiles no longer hidden behind her hands. The shy girl who once sat alone in the cafeteria now had a friend who saw her, truly saw her, and that recognition made a world of difference. Alex noticed the shift not just in her, but in himself as well. He had learned to look beyond appearances and social norms. He had learned that everyone carried stories, struggles, and strengths that were not always visible at first glance. Leela's courage to be vulnerable had taught him patience, empathy, and the quiet power of simply being there for someone. By the end of that semester, Leela still faced challenges. Some classmates still didn't understand her, and some days were harder than others. But she no longer felt invisible. She had a friend who respected her, supported her, and appreciated her for who she was. And Alex had learned that sometimes the most important action is not to fix or change someone, but to simply stay, to simply care, and to simply listen. Their friendship was not dramatic or loud. It didn't need to be. It was steady, growing, and real. And for Leela, that steadiness meant everything. She was beginning to see herself differently, not as someone no one wanted to notice, but as someone with worth, talent, and a story worth telling. And for Alex, being there for her was not just an act of kindness. It was the start of a deep and lasting understanding of what it means to truly see another person. As the school year progressed, they continued their quiet journey together. Leela shared more stories from her grandmother, more drawings, and slowly, more of herself. Alex became a trusted confidant, the person who could listen without judgment, who could stand beside her in moments of doubt, and who could celebrate her small victories. And Leela, for the first time in a long while, felt that maybe, just maybe, someone really did see her for who she was. And so, the first part of their story ended not with a grand event, but with quiet growth. Two young people learning to navigate the complexities of adolescence, trust, and self-worth. It was the beginning of something important, a bond that would shape both of their lives in ways neither could yet fully understand. The weeks following Alex's first acts of kindness marked the beginning of a slow but meaningful change in Leela's life. She still felt the sting of isolation on some days, the weight of invisible eyes that judged her for being different. But having Alex beside her, even in small ways, gave her courage. She realized that someone could notice her without expecting her to change, someone who could accept her as she was. That thought alone was comforting, like a small flame glowing in the darkness. One afternoon, Alex invited her to stay after school to help him with a history project. Leela hesitated at first. She wasn't used to being asked to participate in activities outside the classroom, but she agreed. They sat side by side at a table in the empty library, surrounded by shelves filled with books. The quiet was peaceful, a safe space where they could talk without interruptions. Alex noticed the care she took in handling the books, her delicate attention to details, the way she sometimes paused to imagine the stories behind the pages. As they worked, Alex asked her about her dreams. "If you could go anywhere in the world," he said, "where would you go?" Leela paused, thinking. "I've always wanted to see the deserts my grandmother talks about," she said softly. "The ones where my people lived. The stories she tells, I want to see the places she describes to understand them myself." There was a longing in her voice that was both sad and hopeful. Alex could feel the depth of her connection to her heritage, the way it shaped her identity. Leela began to open up more than she ever had. She shared stories about growing up on the reservation during summer visits, helping her grandmother with small chores, and learning the traditional dances and songs. She told Alex how these experiences made her feel both proud and sometimes disconnected from the world around her. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living in two worlds," she confessed. "One that I belong to, and one that doesn't understand me at all." Alex listened without interruption. He asked questions not to challenge her but to understand her better. "What do you like the most about your traditions?" he asked. Leela smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "I love the stories," she said. "They're full of lessons. They teach me courage, patience, and respect. And even though I feel different at school, these stories remind me that I have strength, too." Their friendship deepened through these conversations. Alex began to notice subtle changes in Leela's confidence. She walked a little taller in the hallways, made eye contact more often, and even shared small jokes that made him laugh. Leela had always been intelligent and talented, but her fear of rejection had hidden her gifts. Now, with Alex's support, she started to explore them again. One day, as they sat under a large oak tree in the school courtyard, Leela shared a drawing she had been working on secretly for weeks. It was a detailed sketch of a desert landscape with mountains in the background, a river winding through the valley, and figures in traditional attire dancing near a fire. Alex studied the drawing in silence, completely captivated by the detail and emotion. "Leela, this is amazing," he said. "You have a real talent. Why don't you ever show this to anyone else?" She shrugged, her gaze dropping to the ground. "People might not care. They might just laugh or ignore it," she admitted quietly. There was a sadness in her voice, a fear that the world would never appreciate her, just as it hadn't in school. Alex realized that her talent, like her heart, had been hidden for so long because of fear. He wanted to reassure her, but he also understood that words alone wouldn't be enough. Instead, he offered her something better, his trust. Over the next few weeks, Alex encouraged her gently. "Why don't we enter the school art contest together?" he suggested one afternoon. Leela's eyes widened. She had never considered herself good enough to compete, but the thought of sharing her work with someone she trusted gave her courage. "Do you really think I can?" she asked hesitantly. Alex smiled. "I don't just think it, I know you can. And I'll be with you every step of the way." Leela agreed, and they began preparing her submission. Alex helped her select the best drawings, offered suggestions, and most importantly, believed in her talent when she doubted herself. It wasn't easy. Some days, Leela would look at her sketches and feel the familiar pang of self-doubt, thinking she wasn't good enough. But Alex reminded her that her worth wasn't determined by anyone else's approval. "Your art is part of who you are," he said, "and it's beautiful. That's all that matters." As they worked together, they laughed, shared stories, and learned more about each other. Alex told her about his own fears, how he sometimes felt invisible too, despite being surrounded by friends. Leela listened carefully, realizing that even people who seemed confident had insecurities. This shared understanding created a bond between them, a friendship built on honesty and acceptance. One chilly morning, as they walked to school together, Leela stopped at the corner of the street and looked up at the sky. "Do you ever feel like we're just passing through life, unnoticed?" she asked. Alex looked at her, his heart aching a little for the girl who had carried so much loneliness. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I think it's the people who notice us, the ones who stay with us, that make all the difference." She nodded slowly, absorbing his words. That day, she felt a small shift inside her, a realization that she didn't have to face the world alone. She had someone who believed in her, someone who would stand by her even when the world seemed harsh and indifferent. The thought was comforting, like the warmth of the sun on her face after a long winter. Their bond continued to grow in small, meaningful ways. They began spending more time together outside of school, sometimes at the library, sometimes at the park, and occasionally at her grandmother's house, where Leela proudly showed Alex the family heirlooms and listened to stories passed down through generations. Alex was fascinated by her culture and heritage, and he admired the pride with which Leela spoke about her roots. One evening, as they worked on the final touches of her art contest entry, Leela paused and looked at Alex. "You know," she said softly, "I've never had anyone really care about me like this before. Not just for my talents or my stories, but for me," Alex smiled. "And I'm not going anywhere," he replied. "I'm staying." Those words, simple as they were, carried immense weight for Leela. She realized that trust and acceptance didn't come from perfection or popularity. They came from people willing to see you, really see you, and choose to be there. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of hope. Maybe the world wasn't as lonely as she had believed. Maybe there were people who would stay, even when it was difficult. The day of the art contest arrived. Leela's heart raced as she placed her drawings on the display tables. Other students whispered, some curious, some doubtful, but Leela didn't let it shake her. Alex stood beside her, offering quiet encouragement. When the judges examined her work, they were impressed not just by the technical skill, but by the emotion and story conveyed in each sketch. Leela felt a sense of pride she had never known, a validation that went beyond winning a prize. Even when the results were announced, it wasn't the victory that mattered most to her. It was the journey she had taken to reach that point. She had faced her fears, shared her talents, and allowed herself to be vulnerable. And through it all, Alex had been there, a steady presence reminding her that she mattered, that her voice, her art, and her spirit were worth seeing. By the end of that part of her journey, Leela began to understand that self-confidence didn't mean never feeling fear or doubt. It meant continuing to move forward, even when those feelings were present, trusting in herself and the people who cared for her. She realized that acceptance, true acceptance, started with trusting someone enough to let them see your heart, even when it felt fragile. And so, Leela's world expanded. She still had challenges to face, days when she felt insecure or overlooked, but she no longer felt entirely alone. She had Alex, a friend who stayed, who listened, who believed in her. And in that friendship, she found the courage to believe in herself. The following weeks felt different for Leela. There was a new warmth inside her, a small spark that made mornings a little brighter and the hallways a little less intimidating. She had learned that someone truly cared, and that realization gave her courage. Yet, beneath her growing confidence, there remained a quiet fear, a fear of being judged, of being misunderstood, of being left alone again. Even though Alex stayed by her side, her heart sometimes whispered doubts that were harder to quiet. One Friday afternoon, the sky had turned a dull gray, and rain pattered softly against the windows of the empty art room. The other students had left early, leaving Leela and Alex alone with stacks of sketchbooks and the faint smell of paint. Leela sat quietly, her fingers tracing the edges of her latest drawing, her eyes distant as if lost in thought. Alex noticed her unusual silence. "Are you okay?" he asked, trying to keep his voice gentle, not wanting to push her if she wasn't ready to talk. Leela didn't answer at first. She took a deep breath, then finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes I feel like no one really sees me. Not just my drawings or my stories, but me, the real me." Alex nodded, understanding more than she could know. "I see you," he said simply. "All of you." His words were quiet, but they carried a weight of sincerity that made Leela's chest tighten. She wanted to believe him, but old fears tugged at her, reminding her of the times she had been ignored or dismissed. "I know," she said softly, "but it's hard. It's like I'm invisible even when people say they notice me. And I get scared that if someone really sees me, they won't like what they find." Her words trembled, exposing a vulnerability she had rarely shared with anyone. Alex could sense how much courage it had taken for her to speak this truth. He leaned a little closer, keeping his tone calm and steady. "It's okay to feel that way," he said. "I'm not going anywhere, Leela. You don't have to hide from me, you can be yourself." There was no pressure, no expectation, just reassurance. Leela's eyes welled up slightly, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to relax. Slowly, carefully, she began to share more. She talked about her days when she felt invisible at school, when classmates ignored her, laughed at her accent, or dismissed her stories about her heritage. She spoke of nights when she felt lonely, wishing she had someone to share her thoughts with. With every word, Alex listened, never interrupting, never judging, only showing that he cared enough to stay. "I don't know why I feel like this sometimes," she admitted, "but it's like there's a wall around me that no one can climb. And when people try, I push them away because I'm scared. I just don't want to be hurt again." Her voice cracked and she looked down, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. Alex reached out and gently placed his hand near hers, not to force anything but to offer comfort. "I understand," he said, "and you don't have to face it alone anymore. We'll take it one step at a time. You don't have to break your wall all at once." There was a pause, filled only with the quiet sound of the rain against the windows. Leela swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her fear slowly ease, replaced by the warmth of trust. She realized that being vulnerable didn't have to mean being hurt. With the right person beside her, it could mean strength, strength to face her doubts, to share her feelings, and to grow. As the afternoon light dimmed, Leela felt a sudden urge to express herself in another way. She picked up her sketchbook and began to draw, letting her emotions flow onto the page. She drew a figure standing on a cliff, looking out over a vast landscape, the wind blowing through their hair. The figure was alone, yet unafraid, facing the horizon with quiet determination. Alex watched silently, understanding without needing to ask. The drawing was more than just an image, it was a reflection of Leela herself. Every line, every detail carried her fears, her hopes, and the courage she was slowly discovering within herself. When she finally looked up at him, her eyes were glistening but bright, filled with a mixture of relief and pride. "Thank you," she whispered, "for staying, for listening." Alex smiled softly. "Always," he replied. And in that simple word, Leela felt a reassurance that she had never known before. In the days that followed, their bond strengthened. Leela began to open up even more, sharing stories from her grandmother, small memories of her childhood, and ideas for new drawings. Alex encouraged her, not by pushing her forward but by standing beside her, offering support whenever she faltered. The difference between having someone beside her and being alone was remarkable. It wasn't that her problems disappeared, they still existed, but facing them felt easier when she knew someone believed in her. One afternoon, as they walked through the quiet streets of their town, Leela paused and looked at Alex. "Do you think people can really change how they feel about someone?" she asked. "I mean, can someone go from seeing me as invisible to actually noticing me?" Alex thought for a moment. "I think it's possible," he said finally, "but it takes time, patience, and trust. People notice when someone is genuine, when they are true to themselves. And you're genuine, that's why I see you, that's why I care." She smiled faintly, feeling a warmth that chased away some of the lingering doubt. "I want to believe that," she said. "I want to believe that people can see me for who I really am." Alex nodded. "And some will," he said. "But the most important thing is that you see yourself, because when you do, other people will too." That evening, Leela returned home to her grandmother's house, carrying her sketchbook filled with her emotions. She showed her grandmother the new drawing she had created. Her grandmother's eyes widened in amazement, and she hugged Leela tightly. "You have a gift, my child," she said. "Not just in your art, but in your heart. Never hide it." Leela felt a surge of pride and determination. she realized that she didn't have to shrink to fit the expectations of others. She could be herself fully with all her strengths and weaknesses. And with Alex by her side, someone who had chosen to stay, she felt capable of facing the world. A few days later, during a quiet moment in the library, Leela spoke again about her feelings of being unwanted, of being overlooked by her peers. She admitted that sometimes the fear returned, creeping into her mind in moments of doubt. But now she had learned a new way to confront it. Instead of hiding, she would share, confide, and express herself, through words, through art, and through trust. Alex smiled at her gently. "You're stronger than you realize," he said. "And I'll remind you when you forget." Leela nodded, a small smile breaking across her face. She understood now that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was courage, the courage to face her fears and to allow someone else to stand with her. From that point on, Leela's world began to shift subtly but powerfully. She participated more in class discussions, shared her ideas without fear of judgment, and even laughed more freely with Alex at her side. She still had moments of doubt, but they no longer defined her. She had discovered that being seen and being understood was possible, and that trust and friendship were powerful tools in overcoming loneliness. By the end of that part of her journey, Leela felt a sense of emotional growth that was profound. She had faced a moment of vulnerability, shared her deepest fears, and discovered that someone could care without judgment. She had learned that staying connected, trusting, and allowing herself to be seen were not signs of weakness, but acts of strength. And for Alex, witnessing her courage was equally transformative. He realized that being present, listening, and supporting someone in their moments of fear could make a difference far beyond what words could describe. He had seen Leela's quiet strength emerge, and he understood the importance of staying through the storms, offering reassurance when the world seemed cold and indifferent. The moment of vulnerability had passed, but its impact lingered. Leela walked with her head a little higher, her steps a little steadier, and her heart a little lighter. She knew there would be challenges ahead, moments when she might doubt herself, but she also knew that trust, friendship, and courage could carry her through. And in that knowledge, she found hope, a hope that would guide her through the next stages of her journey. Spring had arrived, and with it came a sense of renewal for Leela. The world around her seemed brighter. The air smelled fresh with blooming flowers, the sunlight lingered longer in the afternoons, and the school hallways felt less intimidating. Leela herself felt a change within. She had learned to trust Alex, to share her fears, and to recognize her own worth. But now, it was time for her to face the world outside of their small bubble of friendship, to show herself more openly, and to step into life with a growing confidence. It began with small steps. Leela started participating in class more actively. She raised her hand during discussions, offered her opinions, and even asked questions when she didn't understand something. It was a quiet courage, but it was noticeable. Some classmates were surprised, having always thought of Leela as the quiet, invisible girl. Others were indifferent, but that didn't matter to her anymore. She was learning to focus on her own voice rather than the judgments of others. Alex watched her carefully, proud of the changes but careful not to push her too fast. He knew how fragile confidence could be, how quickly it could falter under pressure. So he offered support in subtle ways, encouraging words, small compliments on her artwork, and most importantly, consistent presence. Leela felt strengthened not just by her own growth, but by the steady reassurance of someone who believed in her without conditions. One afternoon, the school announced an exhibition for student artwork in the town community center. Leela hesitated when she first heard the news. The idea of showing her drawings to the public was terrifying. She worried about criticism, about being judged, about the possibility that all the effort she had put into her art would be dismissed. Her heart raced at the thought of standing in front of strangers, exposing a part of herself she had long kept hidden. Alex noticed her unease. "You've come so far," he said gently. Your art deserves to be seen, not because it's perfect, but because it's you. People will see that and they'll appreciate it. His words were soft but firm, reminding her that she didn't need external approval to validate her talent. Leela nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. She wanted to do it. She wanted to show the world that she was more than her insecurities. The day of the exhibition arrived, and Leela carried her drawings carefully, each one a piece of her heart. As she set them up on the display tables, she felt her nerves building, a familiar anxiety creeping in. But Alex stayed by her side, quietly reassuring her that she was capable. When the first visitors approached her artwork, Leela held her breath, waiting for their reactions. To her surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People admired the detail in her drawings, the emotion conveyed through her lines, and the stories that accompanied them. Some asked questions about her inspiration, and she found herself answering confidently, explaining the traditions, landscapes, and memories that had shaped each piece. Each interaction strengthened her sense of self, showing her that people could appreciate her not only for her talent, but also for the person she was. By the end of the exhibition, Leela felt a sense of pride she had never known before. She realized that fear had held her back for far too long, and that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. She had faced a world that had once felt intimidating, and she had come out stronger, more self-assured, and ready to embrace her life more fully. In the weeks that followed, Leela's confidence continued to grow. She began sharing her artwork in class, volunteering to help with school projects, and even joining a small student club that focused on cultural heritage. Her presence became more noticeable, not because she was trying to be seen, but because she had learned to express herself authentically. People began to approach her, ask for advice, or compliment her on her work. Some of them were genuinely interested, while others were curious, but Leela no longer let the opinions of strangers dictate her self-worth. Her relationship with Alex also deepened. They shared more experiences outside of school, like visiting local museums, exploring the countryside, and attending cultural events together. Alex continued to encourage her, not by controlling her choices, but by supporting her in discovering her own voice. Leela realized that true friendship wasn't about dependency. It was about mutual respect, trust, and shared growth. One sunny afternoon, Leela and Alex decided to visit her grandmother's home together. Leela's grandmother welcomed Alex warmly, proud to see the bond her granddaughter had formed. They spent the afternoon listening to stories, cooking traditional meals, and laughing together. Leela felt a sense of belonging not just in her home, but in the world she was slowly opening up to. She understood now that her heritage, her culture, and her unique perspective were strengths, not obstacles. Back at school, Leela faced a new challenge. Some students who had never understood her before began to tease her when she spoke confidently or displayed her artwork. Old fears threatened to resurface. She felt the familiar pang of insecurity, wondering if she was overstepping, if she was once again inviting judgment. But Alex reminded her quietly, "You've grown so much, Leela. Don't let anyone's words take that away from you." She took a deep breath and decided to respond differently this time. Instead of shrinking or hiding, she acknowledged the teasing calmly, without anger or defensiveness, and continued to pursue her interests. She found that her courage inspired others. Some classmates began to approach her, curious and respectful, seeking to learn from her perspective. Leela realized that strength wasn't about forcing people to accept her. It was about standing firm in who she was, regardless of their reactions. As spring turned into summer, Leela's confidence expanded into new areas of her life. She started mentoring younger students in art, helping them discover their talents and encouraging them to express themselves without fear. She shared stories of her heritage, teaching them to embrace their own identities proudly. Alex watched with admiration, recognizing the transformation in Leela from a quiet, uncertain girl into a strong, compassionate young woman. Their friendship had become a source of mutual growth. Alex had learned patience, empathy, and the importance of simply being present. Leela had learned courage, self-respect, and the power of vulnerability. Together, they had navigated the challenges of adolescence, discovering that trust and support could overcome fear and loneliness. One day, Leela sat under the same oak tree where she and Alex had first shared her drawings weeks ago. She sketched quietly, feeling a sense of calm and accomplishment. Alex sat beside her, reading a book, occasionally glancing at her sketches. "You've come so far," he said softly. Leela smiled, a real, confident smile that reflected the growth within her. "I have," she replied, "and it feels amazing. I never thought I could feel this way about myself." She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the fear, the vulnerability, the courage to trust, and the moments of self-discovery. She realized that self-acceptance was not a destination, but a process. Some days would still be hard and moments of doubt would return, but she now had the tools, the mindset, and the support to face them. She had learned that her worth was not defined by others, but by her own recognition of her strengths, her passions, and her heart. The growth Leela experienced extended beyond herself. She noticed subtle changes in her peers as well. Those who once ignored her began to respect her opinions, appreciate her talent, and engage with her more openly. Even those who had teased her began to see her differently, not because they were forced to, but because her confidence and authenticity inspired them to reconsider their own judgments. By the end of the school year, Leela had become a symbol of quiet strength and perseverance. She was still humble, still thoughtful, but she had discovered an inner voice that could not be silenced. She walked with a sense of purpose, participated fully in school and community activities, and inspired others with her courage to embrace herself fully. And through it all, Alex remained by her side, not as a protector but as a companion. They had grown together, learning from each other, challenging each other, and supporting each other. Leela had discovered the importance of trust, the power of expressing oneself, and the beauty of being fully seen. Alex had learned that standing beside someone in their moments of fear could have a profound impact, shaping both their lives in ways that words alone could never capture. As summer approached, Leela looked back on the journey she had taken. From a girl who once felt invisible, afraid, and isolated, she had grown into someone who embraced her identity, celebrated her talents, and faced the world with courage. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, but she also knew that she had discovered something far more important: the strength to stand tall, the wisdom to trust herself, and the knowledge that genuine connections could change everything. Leela smiled as she packed her sketchbooks and notes, ready for the next chapter of her life. She knew that life would not always be easy, but she felt equipped to face it with confidence, compassion, and resilience. And in that quiet sense of readiness, she understood that the journey of self-acceptance was ongoing, but she had already achieved something remarkable. She had learned to embrace herself fully, and that was the greatest victory of all. Summer had settled over the town, bringing with it long, warm days and golden sunsets that lingered late into the evening. Leela felt a sense of calm and satisfaction she had never experienced before. The journey she had been on, full of fear, self-doubt, vulnerability, and courage, was now giving her a new perspective on life. She could see how far she had come, and she knew the path ahead would have challenges, but she also knew she had the strength and support to face them. One afternoon, Leela and Alex sat on the grassy hill near the edge of town, overlooking the valley below. The wind carried the scent of blooming flowers, and the sky was painted with soft shades of orange and pink. Leela held her sketchbook in her lap, flipping through the drawings she had created over the past months. Each one told a story of her fears, her dreams, and her growth. She realized that these sketches were more than just art. They were reflections of her journey, markers of the person she was becoming. Alex glanced at her, a smile on his face. "You've grown so much, Leela," he said softly. "I've watched you face so many fears, and you've handled them with courage I can only admire." Leela felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. It wasn't praise that she had sought, it was recognition, the understanding that someone truly saw the effort she had made to grow, to trust, and to embrace herself. "I feel different," Leela said slowly, her voice thoughtful. "Like I'm finally learning who I am and what I'm capable of. I'm not perfect and I still get scared, but I don't feel as alone anymore. I feel ready." She paused, gazing out at the valley below. "I think that's what matters most, being ready for whatever comes next, even if it's uncertain." Alex nodded, understanding her completely. "Exactly," he said. "It's not about never feeling fear or doubt. It's about knowing you can handle them when they come, and having someone who believes in you while you do." His gaze was steady, reassuring. Leela felt a deep sense of gratitude for his presence in her life. She realized that having someone who stayed with her, who listened without judgment and who believed in her, had made all the difference. Over the summer, Leela continued to explore her talents and passions. She began experimenting with new art techniques, combining sketches with stories and even writing short poems to accompany her drawings. Each creation was an expression of herself, a celebration of her heritage, her experiences, and her emotions. Alex often joined her, offering ideas, encouragement, and sometimes gentle critique. Their friendship had become a partnership in creativity, learning, and growth. Leela also began connecting with her classmates in new ways. She shared her work openly, invited others to join her in small art projects, and even helped organize a community event to celebrate local culture and talent. Her confidence inspired others, and slowly, the perception of her among her peers began to shift. Some who had once ignored or teased her now approached her with curiosity and respect, eager to learn from her perspective and talent. Leela realized that confidence was contagious, and that by embracing herself fully, she was encouraging others to do the same. One afternoon, she returned to her grandmother's home, carrying a collection of her latest sketches. Her grandmother welcomed her with a warm embrace and listened attentively as Leela described each piece. "These are wonderful, my child," her grandmother said proudly. "You have learned not only to see your talent but to share it with the world. That is true courage." Leela felt tears prick her eyes, a mixture of pride, gratitude, and love. She understood that her grandmother's support had always been there, a steady foundation upon which she had built her growing confidence. As summer progressed, Leela faced challenges that tested her newfound strength. Some classmates still made unkind remarks, questioning her abilities or dismissing her ideas. In the past, such moments might have caused her to retreat, to doubt herself. But now, she responded differently. She stood tall, spoke with calm confidence, and let her work and actions speak for themselves. The fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. Each encounter reinforced the lesson she had learned, that self-respect and resilience were far more important than the opinions of others. One particularly hot afternoon, Leela participated in a local art competition held in the community park. Hundreds of people attended, admiring the work of young artists from the town. Leela's pieces were displayed prominently, and she felt a mix of nerves and excitement as visitors approached. People complimented her skill, asked about her inspiration, and engaged with the stories behind her drawings. Leela realized that she no longer needed validation from others. Her joy came from expressing herself and sharing her perspective. The positive feedback was simply a bonus, a reflection of her courage and effort. Throughout the event, Alex stayed by her side, quietly supporting her and celebrating her successes. "You've earned this," he said during a break, handing her a bottle of water. All the hard work, all the courage, it's yours. Don't let anyone take that away." Leela smiled, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. She understood that success was not just about recognition or awards, but about growth, resilience, and the ability to embrace oneself fully. As the day ended and the sun dipped below the horizon, Leela reflected on her journey. She thought about the girl who had once felt invisible and unwanted, the girl who had hesitated to share her talents and stories. She remembered the moments of fear, the tears, and the self-doubt, and she saw how far she had come, how vulnerability, courage, and trust had transformed her life. She understood that the journey of self-acceptance was ongoing, but that she now possessed the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. One evening, as the summer skies turned a brilliant orange, Leela and Alex sat together on the hill once more, looking out over the valley. "I never thought I'd feel this way," Leela said quietly. "I feel happy, confident, ready for the future. And I know there will still be hard days, but I feel prepared." She paused, glancing at Alex. "Thank you for staying, for believing in me, for being there." Alex smiled gently. "I didn't do anything extraordinary," he said. "I just stayed. You did the hard part. You trusted yourself, you faced your fears, and you let yourself be seen. That's the real courage." Leela nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonate deeply. She realized that courage and growth were not solitary achievements. They were nurtured by support, trust, and genuine connection. The summer passed with quiet accomplishments, meaningful experiences, and deepening bonds. Leela continued to grow as an artist, a storyteller, and a young woman embracing her identity. She spent time with her grandmother, visited cultural landmarks, and shared her knowledge with younger students, inspiring them to value their heritage and express themselves boldly. Through it all, Alex remained a constant presence, a reminder that genuine friendship and support could change a life. As the new school year approached, Leela felt a sense of readiness. She understood that life would not always be easy, but she now had the tools to navigate its challenges. She had learned to trust herself, to express her talents, to face fear, and to accept support without hesitation. She had discovered that vulnerability was not weakness, but a doorway to connection, courage, and personal growth. The first day of school arrived, and Leela walked through the hallways with a quiet confidence. She smiled at classmates, greeted teachers warmly, and carried her sketchbook with pride. Some students glanced at her with curiosity, others with admiration, and some with lingering doubt. But Leela no longer let their opinions dictate her sense of self. She had found her voice, and she was determined to use it authentically. Alex joined her at lunch, carrying a tray of food and a smile that conveyed pride and reassurance. "Ready for another year?" he asked. Leela nodded, feeling a sense of excitement mixed with calm assurance. "I am," she replied, "and this time I feel like I can face anything." Together, they sat under the familiar oak tree, sharing stories, laughter, and plans for the future. Leela realized that her journey had not only strengthened her, but had also deepened her understanding of connection, empathy, and resilience. She knew that challenges would come, but she felt empowered to meet them head-on, with courage, creativity, and the support of those who truly cared. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and purple, Leela closed her sketchbook and looked at Alex. "Thank you," she said again softly, "for everything." Alex smiled. "Always," he replied, a single word that carried the promise of unwavering support. And so, Leela's journey came full circle, not in a dramatic climax, but in the quiet triumph of self-discovery, acceptance, and hope. She had faced fear, embraced her talents, built meaningful connections, and learned the power of trust and courage. Her story was not just about overcoming loneliness, but about finding herself and realizing that she was never truly alone. In the months and years that followed, Leela continued to grow, create, and inspire. She nurtured her friendships, pursued her passions, and approached life with confidence and resilience. And through it all, she remembered the simple, powerful lesson that had changed everything. That being seen, being trusted, and being brave enough to embrace oneself was the greatest gift of all.